Japan is renowned worldwide as one of the safest countries on earth. With crime rates so low that children walk to school alone and people leave their bicycles unlocked, it seems like the perfect destination for travelers seeking peace of mind. The nation boasts a 99% conviction rate and a murder rate under 1 per 100,000 people, less than a quarter of the rate in the United States. For most visitors, Japan represents order, safety, and predictability. But beneath this facade of security lies a darker reality that few tourists ever learn about until it's too late. In a country where conformity is prized above all else, there exists a phenomenon so disturbing that it has its own name. Johatsu, literally meaning evaporation. These are the people who simply vanish without a trace, disappearing into Japan's vast wilderness as if they never existed at all. Every year, between 70,000 and 90,000 people are reported missing in Japan. While many are eventually found, thousands more join the ranks of the Johatsu, the evaporated people who fade away into administrative voids, hidden corners of society, or Japan's unforgiving natural landscapes. Some disappear by choice, seeking escape from shame, debt, or societal pressure. Others vanish under circumstances so mysterious that they defy all logical explanation. Today, you'll discover 3 of the most chilling and unexplained tourist disappearances in modern Japanese history. These are not stories of voluntary evaporation or planned escapes. These are cases where visitors to Japan simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions, theories, and the haunting possibility that some secrets are meant to stay buried in the land of the rising sun. From ancient sacred mountains to pristine hiking trails, these disappearances will make you question everything you thought you knew about safety in Japan. Chapter 2. In the summer of 2018, the ancient city of Nikko was experiencing its peak tourist season. Located just 2 hours north of Tokyo, this UNESCO World Heritage Site draws millions of visitors each year with its stunning temples, pristine lakes, and lush mountain scenery. For centuries, Nikko has been considered a sacred place where the physical and spiritual worlds converge. But on July 29, 2018, this peaceful sanctuary became the setting for one of Japan's most perplexing missing person cases. Tiffaine Veron, a 36-year-old French tourist, had arrived in Japan with all the excitement and careful planning typical of a solo traveler. An experienced hiker and nature enthusiast, she had chosen Nikko specifically for its reputation as one of Japan's most beautiful and safe destinations. The city, whose name literally means sunlight, seemed like the perfect place for a peaceful day of sightseeing and spiritual reflection. On that fateful Sunday morning, Tiffaine checked out of her hotel around 11:40 a.m., leaving behind her luggage and passport in her room. She carried only the essentials for a day trip: her phone, camera, and a small backpack. Her plan was simple: explore the historic temples and perhaps take one of the well-marked hiking trails that wind through the surrounding mountains. It was the kind of routine tourist activity that happens thousands of times every day in Nikko without incident. But Tiffaine Veron would never return to collect her belongings. The first sign that something was wrong came from her phone's digital footprint. Japanese authorities later determined that her device had remained active throughout the day, pinging cell towers as she moved around the Nikko area. The last signal was recorded at 6:11 p.m. when her phone abruptly switched off due to what investigators described as damage, though they never specified what kind of damage or what might have caused it. What makes Tiffaine's disappearance particularly unsettling is that she suffered from epilepsy, a medical condition her family and friends were well aware of. This detail became crucial to the investigation, as it provided what seemed like a logical explanation for her vanishing. Japanese police quickly theorized that she had suffered a seizure while hiking and had either fallen into the river behind her hotel or slipped on one of the more remote forest trails in the area. But as the search expanded and days turned into weeks, this seemingly reasonable explanation began to crumble. Massive search operations involving helicopters, search dogs, and hundreds of volunteers scoured every inch of Nikko's forests, rivers, and hiking trails. Divers explored the depths of the local waterways. Mountain rescue teams checked every cliff face and hidden ravine where someone might have fallen. The search was one of the most comprehensive in the region's history, yet it yielded absolutely nothing. No clothing, no camera, no backpack, not even the smallest trace of Tiffaine's presence anywhere in the natural areas where she was supposed to have had an accident. The Veron family, growing increasingly frustrated with what they saw as a superficial investigation, began conducting their own research. What they discovered only deepened the mystery. They learned that Tiffane's phone data showed movement patterns that didn't match the theory of a random hiking accident. Instead of following established tourist routes, the phone's last known location suggested she had been in areas that were not typical destinations for casual sightseers. Even more disturbing was what happened when French authorities became involved. Unlike Japanese police, who had classified the case as a probable accident, French investigators opened a formal kidnapping investigation. The contrast in approaches highlighted a fundamental disagreement about what had actually happened to Tiffany Veron. In an attempt to reassure the French family and address their concerns about potential foul play, Japanese police performed luminol tests in Tiffany's hotel room. Luminol is a chemical that glows when it comes into contact with blood, even trace amounts that have been cleaned away. When they sprayed the luminol in her room, it revealed a large stain on one of the walls, exactly the kind of evidence that might indicate violence had occurred in the space. However, in a move that only added to the family's suspicions, police later announced that despite the luminol reaction, the stain was not blood. They provided no further explanation of what the substance actually was or why it had triggered such a strong reaction to the blood-detecting chemical. The case attracted international attention when the United Nations Committee on Enforced Disappearances formally requested that Japanese authorities improve their cooperation with French investigators. This highly unusual step reflected growing concerns about Japan's handling of missing foreign nationals and highlighted the stark differences between Japanese and Western approaches to such investigations. What makes the Nikko mystery even more chilling is its connection to a broader phenomenon in Japanese society. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people in Japan become johatsu, deliberately disappearing from their lives to escape debt, shame, domestic violence, or societal pressure. Entire industries exist to help people vanish, with specialized companies called yonegeya or night movers that can make someone disappear without a trace in a matter of hours. But Tiffany Veron was not a Japanese citizen struggling with cultural pressures. She was a foreign tourist on a day trip in one of Japan's most visited and heavily monitored tourist destinations. The idea that she could simply evaporate in such a place challenges everything we think we know about modern surveillance, search and rescue capabilities, and the basic laws of physics. To this day, not a single trace of Tiffany Veron has been found. No DNA evidence, no personal belongings, no witness accounts of what happened during those crucial hours between morning and evening. The Veron family continues their investigation with the help of French authorities, but the mystery remains as impenetrable as it was on that summer day in 2018. The case raises uncomfortable questions about what really happened in Nikko and whether there are forces at work in Japan that outsiders simply don't understand. Was this a tragic accident in a location where the body simply hasn't been found? Was it a crime that has been covered up or inadequately investigated? Or is there something about Japan's spiritual and cultural landscape that allows people to disappear in ways that defy conventional explanation? In Nikko, where ancient beliefs about the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds still hold sway, perhaps some questions aren't meant to be answered. Chapter 3. In the summer of 1989, Daisetsuzan National Park in Hokkaido was home to one of the most bizarre incidents in Japanese rescue history. This vast expanse of untouched forest and towering peaks, including Mount Asahi, Hokkaido's highest mountain, represented some of Japan's most challenging and isolated terrain. On July 24th, two experienced Tokyo hikers went missing on the demanding trail from Mount Kurodake to Mount Asahi. These weren't casual weekend warriors. They were seasoned mountaineers familiar with the dangers of high-altitude hiking in Japan's unforgiving northern wilderness. When the two men failed to check in at their expected time, their absence triggered a full-scale search and rescue operation. When rescue helicopters swept the area, they spotted something that shouldn't have been there, a massive SOS sign constructed from fallen birch logs, arranged with mathematical precision on the forest floor. Each letter stood several feet tall and was clearly visible from the air, exactly what you'd expect from someone desperately trying to signal for help. The rescue team immediately moved in, assuming they had found their missing hikers. But when they reached the location of the SOS sign, they discovered something that made no sense at all. The two Tokyo mountaineers were indeed in the area, and they were successfully rescued, but they had no idea who had built the giant message that had led to their salvation. Both men categorically denied creating the SOS sign. They insisted they had never been to that specific location and weren't even aware they needed rescuing until the helicopter appeared overhead. If the two hikers hadn't built the SOS sign, then who had? And why was it exactly where searchers would need to look to find the lost climbers? The mystery deepened when investigators examined aerial photographs and topographic maps. The Japan Forestry Agency conducted a thorough analysis of previous aerial surveys of the area. What they discovered was shocking. The SOS sign had been visible in photographs taken on September 20th, 1987, nearly 2 years before the rescue incident that brought it to public attention. This revelation transformed the case from a simple rescue story into something far more sinister. Someone had built that SOS sign years earlier, but who? And what had happened to the person desperate enough to construct such an elaborate cry for help? The answer came the following day when search teams returned to investigate. In the vicinity of the mysterious SOS sign, they made a grisly discovery: human skeletal remains scattered among the dense undergrowth. Investigators found personal belongings that had been carefully stuffed into a tree root near the sign. The items painted a disturbing picture of someone's final moments in the wilderness. There were 2 cameras, their film still intact and waiting to be developed, a notebook filled with handwritten entries that would later provide crucial clues about the identity of the victim, and most unsettling of all, a tape recorder containing cassette tapes with recordings of a man's voice desperately calling for help. When investigators processed the personal belongings, they made a breakthrough. Among the items was an identification card belonging to Kenji Iwamura, a man who had been reported missing since 1984. Iwamura had set out alone on a hiking expedition in this exact area and had never returned. His disappearance had been written off as another tragic mountaineering accident. But the evidence suggested that Iwamura had survived far longer than anyone had imagined. The tape recordings found with his belongings were particularly haunting. In them, a man's voice, presumed to be Iwamura's, could be heard calling for help, his tone growing increasingly desperate and weak as the recordings progressed. Acquaintances who knew Iwamura confirmed that many of the found items matched things he had been carrying when he disappeared. The same size basketball shoes, the same type of recording equipment, even tapes of theme songs that friends remembered him enjoying. Everything pointed to the skeletal remains being those of the long-missing hiker. But this identification only made the central mystery more profound. If Iwamura had died sometime after 1984, who had built the SOS sign that was photographed in 1987? How had he managed to construct such an elaborate and precisely arranged signal while presumably injured, alone, and fighting for survival in one of Japan's most hostile environments? The terrain where the incident occurred provided some clues about why escape might have been impossible. The area sits near a formation known as Kinko Iwa, Safe Rock, which serves as a landmark for climbers navigating the ridge of Mount Asahi. However, there's also a similar formation called Nize Kinko Iwa, Fake Safe Rock, nearby. The tragic irony is that if someone accidentally fell from the fake landmark instead of the real one, they would end up exactly where the SOS incident occurred. The slope above this location is described as a dense grove of sasa bamboo that grows sideways, creating an almost impenetrable barrier. While it might be relatively easy to fall into this area from above, climbing back out would be virtually impossible, especially for an injured person. Below the main area lies a cliff, making escape in that direction equally hopeless. Investigators estimated that building the wooden SOS sign would have required approximately 2 days of continuous work and considerable physical effort. Each letter was constructed by carefully stacking large fallen birch trees in precise arrangements visible from the air. For someone trapped, possibly injured, and fighting starvation and exposure, this would have been an enormous undertaking. The questions surrounding the SOS incident remain unanswered to this day. If Iwamura died shortly after his 1984 disappearance, the timing doesn't match the 1987 photographs of the sign. If he survived until 1987 or later, it means he endured years alone in some of Japan's most unforgiving wilderness, somehow finding the strength and resources to build an elaborate rescue signal that wouldn't be acted upon for years. In the deep wilderness of Daisetsuzan, where the boundary between life and death can be measured in degrees of temperature and hours of daylight, the giant SOS sign serves as a monument to human determination and the ultimate mystery of what happens when that determination isn't enough. Chapter 4. Mount Fuji stands as Japan's most sacred symbol, rising 389 feet above sea level in perfect symmetrical beauty. For over a millennium, this active volcano has drawn pilgrims, artists, and adventurers to its slopes, representing the spiritual heart of Japan itself. But in recent years, something has changed on the sacred mountain. What was once purely a spiritual pilgrimage site has become the backdrop for an alarming number of mysterious incidents and unexplained disappearances. In 2024 alone, 83 people were involved in incidents on Mount Fuji, a staggering 62% increase over the average of the previous 5 years. This dramatic spike has transformed Japan's most beloved mountain into something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The surge began capturing public attention when rescue teams found the bodies of 3 people near the volcano's crater during a search for a Tokyo resident who had failed to return home after climbing the mountain. What made this case particularly unsettling was his last contact. He had reached the summit, taken photos, and sent them to his family, but then vanished during what should have been a routine descent. One of the most chilling recent cases involved a climber who had been live streaming his ascent on YouTube. The man, identifying himself as Ted Zhu, was broadcasting his climb to viewers worldwide when disaster struck near the 7th station. "Oh, this place is slippery, getting dangerous," he noted to his audience. These were among his last words before viewers watched the camera angle shift suddenly and the stream end abruptly. When authorities found his body at 9,800 feet, aspects of the scene didn't match a simple climbing accident. The body's position and equipment condition suggested something more complicated than a fall. But Mount Fuji's mysteries extend far beyond individual climbing incidents. At the mountain's northwestern base lies Aokigahara, a dense forest that has earned the chilling nickname Suicide Forest, but its connection to disappearances goes far beyond its reputation. Aokigahara, also known as the Sea of Trees, spans 30 square kilometers of terrain unlike anywhere else on Earth. The forest grew from hardened lava deposited by Mount Fuji's 864 CE eruption, creating a landscape with properties that seem to defy natural law. The porous volcanic rock absorbs sound so completely that visitors often report an unnatural, oppressive silence. Even more disturbing are the forest's effects on modern technology. The high iron content in the soil interferes with GPS systems and cell phone signals, making it remarkably easy for even experienced hikers to become completely lost within minutes of leaving marked trails. In 2003, 105 bodies were found in Aokigahara, exceeding the previous record of 78 in 2002. By 2010, police recorded 54 confirmed suicides out of more than 200 attempts. However, these numbers only account for bodies actually found. Many more enter Aokigahara and are never seen again, potentially lost forever in dense undergrowth or hidden lava caves. The forest's association with death predates its modern reputation by centuries. Local legends speak of yubasuit, an ancient practice where families would abandon elderly relatives to die during famines. Literature cemented its reputation, particularly Wataru Tsurumi's 1993 The Complete Manual of Suicide, calling Aokigahara the perfect place to die. What makes Aokigahara particularly relevant to tourist disappearances is the significant number who enter and are never found. Unlike confirmed suicides, these individuals vanish without typical evidence of intentional self-harm, following patterns similar to unexplained vanishings throughout Japan. Search teams regularly discover abandoned campsites with food still in cooking pots and belongings scattered as if owners simply walked away. Some sites show no violence or struggle, yet occupants are never found despite extensive searches. Rescue worker Toru Kurihara, who has spent decades searching Aokigahara, once discovered 36 bodies over a period of just 37 days. But he also reports finding numerous sites where people had clearly been staying, complete with tents, clothing, and supplies, but where no trace of the occupants could be found. These ghost camps, as some rescuers call them, represent a category of disappearance that officials rarely discuss publicly. In response to the growing number of incidents, authorities have taken increasingly dramatic steps to deter people from entering dangerous areas. Security cameras have been installed at forest entrances to track who enters and exits. Warning signs in multiple languages remind visitors that their lives are precious and provide suicide prevention hotline numbers. Rangers patrol the area, looking for people who might be in distress. Despite these efforts, the disappearances continue. In 2022, officials stopped releasing specific numbers of deaths and disappearances in Aokigahara, fearing that publicity might actually encourage more people to visit the forest with dark intentions. This policy of silence has only added to the mystery surrounding what really happens to those who vanish in the Sea of Trees. The connection between Mount Fuji and Aokigahara creates a unique geographical area where disappearances follow patterns, defying conventional explanation. The mountain's spiritual significance, combined with the forest's otherworldly properties, has created what researchers describe as a zone of disappearance. Today, Mount Fuji remains one of the world's most popular climbing destinations, attracting between 200,000 and 300,000 climbers annually. But beneath the surface of this busy tourist attraction lies a darker reality that few visitors ever learn about. The sacred mountain that has inspired artists and pilgrims for over 1,000 years has become the epicenter of Japan's most mysterious and unexplained disappearances. As authorities grapple with rising incidents, one thing becomes clear. There are forces around Mount Fuji we don't understand. Whether natural, supernatural, or something else, they've transformed Japan's most sacred mountain into a place where people vanish as if they never existed. These stories remind us that, even in our interconnected world, there are still places where people can vanish without explanation, locations where the very landscape seems to swallow visitors whole. Japan's mysterious disappearances force us to confront uncomfortable questions about the limits of human understanding and the possibility that some secrets are meant to remain hidden in the shadows of sacred mountains and haunted forests. What do you think happened to these missing souls? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, when traveling to remote places, even in the safest countries in the world, some mysteries are better left unexplored.